राम हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 हरे कृष्ण हरे राम 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 हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 हरे कृष्ण हरे राम 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 हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 राम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्री सात गौरभक्त वृंद. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे. They're going to Chatra. Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. You are also in show. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hostel Shanko Skim. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. I'll go inside. Okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram 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 Hare जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्री सद्भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण हरे हरे राम 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 हरे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्री सद्भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण हरे हरे राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण हरे राम हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम हरे कृष्ण हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 कृष्ण राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम राम हरे हरे। Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्री गौरभक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्री गौरभक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे 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 हरे कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे राम राम हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे राम राम
जय माता दी प्रभु लावण्य माता दी हरे कृष्णा कन्नड़ प्रणाम
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam.
yeah I'm just making you host माता दी
Okay Prabhuji. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam.
हरे कृष्णा धन्यवाद माता दी I couldn't reply your cute kind word Devendra Mishra
Prabhuji, my voice clear leta.
yeah okay yeah I made you host माता दी
Okay Prabhuji. I'll start then.
yeah you can start actually I was saying to Sandhya Mata's son
Oh.
he Pawan Prabhu sent a message in the group
Yes
right
Prabhuji. Yes.
very
Very
cute
cute.
Mata huh? Gajendra Moksha cute
Thank you Prabhuji. He's
it's good very nice man that's the way devotees you have to take out from Bhagavatam and try to add some stories and let our kids know so that they will enjoy Hare
Sure.
Krishna I'll be
Thank you
dropping
Prabhuji. Please bless him and pray for us also.
he already is a blessed child already Hanuman ka bhakt hai wo. Hanuman Kesari Nandan means Hanuman ఉంది
హనుమాన్
right
అవును ప్రభుజీ దాట్ హనుమాన్ అంటే మేము పెట్టింది కూడా అందుకే అంత డివోషనల్ క్వాలిటీస్ రావాలనేసి అని
yeah he's a wonderful servant of Rama also. Yes okay Mataji and Prabhuji, I'm dropping off. Okay.
ఓకే
Yeah.
ప్రభుజీ
So continue. Hare Krishna. Dandavad pranams to all. Hare Krishna.
హరే కృష్ణ ప్రభుజీస్ అండ్ మాతాజీస్ విల్ స్టార్ట్ ఓం నమో భగవతే వాసుదేవాయ ఓం నమో భగవతే వాసుదేవాయ ఓం నమో భగవతే వాసుదేవాయ ఓం అజ్ఞానతిమిరంధస్య జ్ఞానాంజనాశలాకయా चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकं नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम रामा हरे हरे. We'll start with Bhagavad Gita 15.5.
This is important verse. You can recite the verse also, Mataji.
Okay. Ikkade kada Mataji, మనం start
Yeah,
చేసేది.
ikkade Mataji. Yeah, important verse. Yeah, carry on.
నిర్మాణ మోహాజిత సంగ దోష అధ్యాత్మ నిత్య వినివృత్త కామ ద్వంద్వైర్విముక్త సుఖ దుఃఖ సంయైర్ గచ్చంత్యమూఢా పదం అవ్యయం యతత్. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are free from dualities of happiness and distress, and who unbewildered know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The surrendering process is described here very nicely. The first qualification is that one should not be deluded by pride, because a conditioned soul is puffed up, thinking himself the lord of material nature. It is very difficult for him to surrender. One second. Yeah. Difficult for him to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should know by the cultivation of real knowledge that he is not Lord of material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord. When one is free from delusion caused by pride, he can begin the process of surrender. For one who is always expecting some honor in this material world, it is not possible to surrender to the Supreme Person. Pride is due to illusion, for although one comes here, stays for a brief time, and then goes away, he has the foolish notion that he is the lord of the world. He thus makes all things complicated, and he is always in trouble. The whole world moves under this impression. People are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society, and they have divided the land under false impression that they are the proprietors. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of this world. When one is freed from such a false notion, he becomes free from all the false associations caused by the familial, social, and national affections. These faulty associations bind one to this material world. After this stage, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full in knowledge. Then it is possible for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of God. Hare Krishna. Sanita Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yeah, Mataji, ee verse could important. Chadavandi Mataji. Yeah.
Yes, Mataji.
160, sorry.
नातत् भाष्यते सूर्यो न शशाङ्को न पावकः यद्गात्माना निवर्तन्ते तद्धर्मा परमं मम. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: that supreme abode of mind is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Thus, who reach it never return to this material world. Purport: the spiritual world, the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, which is known as Krishna Loka, Goloka, Vrindavana, is described here. In the spiritual sky, there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, fire, or electricity, because all the planets are self-luminous. We have only one planet in this universe, the sun, which is self-luminous. But all the planets in the spiritual sky are self-luminous. The shining effulgence of all those planets, called Vaikuntha, constitutes the shining sky known as the Brahma Jyotir. Actually, the effulgence is emanating from the planet of Krishna, Goloka, Vrindavana. Part of the shining effulgence is covered by the Mahat the material world. Other than this, the major portion of the shining sky is full of spiritual planets, which are called Vaikunthas, chief of which is Goloka Vrindavana. As long as a living entity is in this dark material world, he is in conditional life. But as soon as he reaches the spiritual sky, by cutting through the false perverted tree of this material world, he becomes liberated. Then there is no chance of his coming back here. In his conditional life, the living entity considers himself to the Lord of this material world. But in his liberated state, he enters into the spiritual kingdom and becomes an associate of the Supreme Lord. There he enjoys eternal bliss, eternal life, and full knowledge. Shall I read, Mataji? Or?
We'll give it to Sandhya Mataji.
Okay, Mataji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sandhya Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
One should be captivated by this information. He should desire to transfer himself to that eternal world and extricate himself from this false reflection of reality. For one who is too much attached to this material world, it is very difficult to cut that attachment. But if he takes to Krishna consciousness, there is a chance of gradually becoming detached. One has to associate himself with devotees, those who are in Krishna consciousness. One should search out a society dedicated to Krishna consciousness and learn how to detach devotional service. In this way, he can cut off his attachment to the material world. One cannot become detached from the attraction of the material world simply by dressing himself in saffron cloth. He must become attached to the devotional service of the Lord. Therefore, one should take it very seriously that devotional service, as described in the 12th chapter, is the only way to get out of this false representation of the real tree. In chapter 14, the contamination of all kinds of processes by material nature is described. Only devotional service is described as purely transcendental. The words paramam mama are very important here. Actually, every nook and corner is a property of the Supreme Lord. But the spiritual world is paramam, full of 6 opulences. The Katha Upanishad 2.2.15 also confirms that in the spiritual world, there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, or stars. Na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarakam. But the whole spiritual sky is illuminated by the internal potency of the Supreme Lord. That supreme abode can be achieved only by surrender and by no other means.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mataji.
Lavanya Mataji.
Yeah, this is also important. I'll read. Mamaivaamsho jivaloke jivabhuta sanatana manashyastani indriyani prakristani karshati. Translation and purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: the living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which includes the mind. Purport: in this world, the identity of the living being is clearly given. The living entity is the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord eternally. It is not that he assumes individuality in this conditioned life and his liberated state becomes one with the Supreme Lord. He is eternally fragmented. It is clearly said, Sanatana. According to the Vedic version, the Supreme Lord manifests and expands himself in innumerable expansions, of which the primary expansions are Vishnu Tattva and the secondary expansions are the living entities. In other words, the Vishnu Tattva is the personal expansion and the living entities are the separated expansions. By his personal expansion, he is manifested in various forms like Lord Rama, Narasimhadeva, Vishnumurti, and all other predominating deities in the Vaikuntha planets. The separated expansions, the living entities are eternally servitors. The personal expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mataji, there is disturbance, Mataji. Something is going back. Yeah, sorry. One second. The personal expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the individual identities of the Godhead, are always present. Similarly, the separated expansions of the living entities have their identities. As fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, the living entities have also fragmental portions of his qualities, of which independent is one. Every living entity as an individual soul has his personal individuality and a minute form of independence. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul, and by proper use of independence, he is always liberated. In either case, he is qualitatively eternal as the Supreme Lord is. In his liberated state, he is freed from his material condition, and he is under the and he is under the engagement of transcendental service unto the Lord. In his conditioned life, he is dominated by the material modes of nature, and he forgets the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As a result, he has to struggle very hard to maintain his existence in this material world. Yes, Mataji. Can I continue, Mataji? Haribol?
We'll give it to Raju Prabhuji.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Raju Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. The living entities, not only human beings and the cats and dogs, but even the Hare Krishna, Mataji. Cats and dogs? Yeah, cats and dogs, but even the greater controllers of the material world, Brahma, Lord Shiva, even Vishnu, are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They're all eternal, not temporary manifestations. The word Karshati, struggling or grappling hard, is very significant. The conditioned soul is bound up, has those shackled by iron chains. He is bound up by the false ego and the mind. The mind is the chief agent of the driving him in this material existence. When the mind is in the mode of goodness, his activities are good. When the mind is in the mode of passion, his activities are troublesome. And when the mind is in the mode of ignorance, he travels in the lower species of life. It is clear, however, in this verse that the conditioned soul is covered by the material body with the mind and senses. And even he liberated his material covering perishes, but his spiritual body manifests itself in its individual capacity. The following information is there in the Madhyan Dhinayana Stuti. Madhyan Dhinayana Stuti. Sava eva Brahma Nishta idam Sariram Martyam Atishrija Brahma Bhishma Padaya Brahmana Pashyati Brahmana Shruniti Brahmanyavedam Sarvam Anubhuvati. It is stated here that when his living entity is giving up this material embodiment and enter into the spiritual world, he revives the spiritual body. And in his spiritual body, he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He can hear and speak to him face to face, and he can understand the Supreme Personality has ease. From Smriti also it is understand. Vasanti Yatra Purushas Sarve Vaikunta Murtaya. In the spiritual planets, everyone lives in bodies featured like the Supreme Personality of Godheads. As far as bodily construction is concerned, there is no difference between the part and parcel living entities and the expansions of Vishnumurti. In other words, at liberation, the living entity gets a spiritual body by the grace of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Sapan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. The words Mamai Vamsha, fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are also very significant. The fragmental portion of Supreme Lord is not like some material broken part. We have already understood in second chapter that the spirit cannot be cut into pieces. This fragment is not materially conceived. It is not like matter, which can be cut into pieces and joined together again. That conception is not applicable here because the Sanskrit word Sanatana, eternal, is used. The fragmental portion is eternal. It is also stated in the beginning of the second chapter that in each and every individual body, the fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is present. Dehinosmin yata dehe. That fragmental portion, when liberated from bodily entanglement, revives its original spiritual body in the spiritual sky, in a spiritual planet, and enjoys association with the Supreme Lord. It is, however, understood here that the living entity, being the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is qualitatively one with the Lord, just as the parts and parcels of the gold are also gold. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another. As the air carries aromas, thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. Purport. Here the living entity is described as Ishvara, the controller of his own body. If he likes, he can change his body to a higher grade, and if he likes, he can move to a lower class. Minute independence is there. The change his body undergoes depends upon him. At the time of death, the consciousness he has created will carry him on the next type of body. If he has made his consciousness like that of a cat or dog, he is sure to change to a cat's or dog's body. And if he has fixed his consciousness on godly qualities, he will change into the form of demigod. And if he is in Krishna consciousness, he will be transferred to Krishna Loka in the spiritual world and will associate with Krishna. It is a false claim that after the annihilation of this body, everything is finished. The individual soul is transmigrating from one body to another, and his present body and present activities are background of his next body. One gets a different body according to karma, and he has to quit this body in due course. It is stated here that the subtle body, which carries the conception of the next body, develops another body in the next life. This process of transmigrating from one body to another and struggling while in the body is called karshati, or struggle for existence. Samyukta Mataji.
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Purport. In other words, if the living entity adulterates his consciousness with the qualities of cats and dogs, in his next life, he gets a cat or dog body and enjoys. Consciousness is originally pure like water, but if we mix water with a certain color, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure, for the spirit soul is pure, but consciousness is changed according to the association of the material qualities. Real consciousness is Krishna consciousness. When therefore one is situated in Krishna consciousness, he is in his pure life. But if his consciousness is adulterated by some types of material mentality, in the next life he gets a corresponding body. He does not necessarily get a human body again. He can get the body of a cat, dog, hog, demigod, or one of many other forms, for there are 84 lakh species. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you.
Here I remember that verse, Mataji, 8.6. Yam yam vapi smaran bhava. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavan. Chadate ante kalevaram. Tam tam yevati kaunteya. Sada tadbhava bhavita. Translation is, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. Yeah. That's what our consciousness should be on Krishna. Otherwise, we will get that body. Like Jadabartha, he think of deer and he became deer in the next life. Although he is in the stage of bhava.
Yes, Mataji.
It's very difficult to conceive. Yes, Mataji. Yeah, please, Mataji.
Sandhya Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Purport. The word Jnana Chakshuha is very significant. Without knowledge, one cannot understand how a living entity leaves his present body, nor what form of body he is going to take in the next life, nor even why he is living in a particular type of body. This requires a great amount of knowledge understood from Bhagavad Gita and similar literatures heard from a bona fide spiritual master. One who is trained to perceive all these things is fortunate. Every living entity is quitting his body under certain circumstances. He is living under certain circumstances, and he is enjoying under certain circumstances under the spell of material nature. As a result, he is suffering different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power to understand their change of body and their stay in a particular body. They cannot comprehend it. Those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from the body and is changing its body and enjoying in different ways. A person in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned living entity is suffering in this material existence. Therefore, those who are highly developed in Krishna consciousness try their best to give this knowledge to the people in general, for their conditional life is very much troublesome. They should come out of it and be Krishna consciousness and liberate themselves to transfer to spiritual world.
Thank you, Mataji. Raju Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Translation: the endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in the self-realization can see all this clearly, but those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try. Purport: there are many transcendentalists on the path of spiritual self-realization, but one who is not situated in self-realization cannot see how the things are changing in the body of living entity. The word yogina is significant in this connection. In the present day, there are many so-called yogis, and there are many so-called association of yogis, but they are actually blind in the matter of self-realization. They are simply addicted to some sort of gymnastic exercise and are satisfied even the body is well built and healthy. They have no other information. They are also called yatantopi akrita manaha. Even though they are endeavoring in so-called yoga system, they are not self-realized. Such people cannot understand the process of the transmigration of the soul. Only those who are actually in the yoga system and have realized the self, the world and the Supreme Lord, in other words, the Bhakti yogis, those engaged in pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness, can understand how the things taking place. Things are taking place. Hare Krishna.
Sapan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Translation: the splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of the fire are also from me. Purport: the unintelligent cannot understand how things are taking place, but one can begin to be established in knowledge by understanding what the Lord explains here. Everyone sees the sun, moon, fire, and electricity. One should simply try to understand that the splendor of the sun, the splendor of the moon, the splendor of electricity or fire are coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In such a conception of life, the beginning of Krishna consciousness lies a great deal of advancement for the conditioned soul in this material world. The living entities are essentially the parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and he is giving here with the hint how they can come back to Godhead, back to home. From this verse, we can understand that the sun is illuminating the whole solar system. There are different universes and solar systems, and there are different suns, moons, planets also. But in each universe, there is only one sun. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 10:21, the moon is one of the stars. Nakshatranam aham shasi. Sunlight is due to the spiritual effulgence in the spiritual sky of the Supreme Lord. With the rise of the sun, the activities of human beings are set up. They set fire to prepare their foodstuff. They set fire to start the factories, etc. So many things are done with help of fire. Therefore, sunrise, fire, and moonlight are so pleasing to the living entities. Without their help, no living entity can live. So, if one can understand that the light and splendor of the sun, moon, and fire are emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, then one's Krishna consciousness will begin. By the moonshine, all the vegetables are nourished. The moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Without his mercy, there cannot be sun. Without his mercy, there cannot be moon. And without his mercy, there cannot be fire. And without help of the sun, moon, and fire, no one can live. These are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. Hare Krishna.
Translation: I enter into each planet and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. It is understood that all the planets are floating in the air only by the energy of the Lord. The Lord enters into every atom, every planet, and every living being. That is discussed in Brahma Samhita. It is said there that one plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, enters into the planets, the universe, the living entity, and even into the atom. So due to his entrance, everything is appropriately manifested. When the spirit soul is there, a living man can float on the water. But when the living spark is out of the body and body is dead, the body sinks. Of course, when it is decomposed, it floats just like straw and other things. But as soon as the man is dead, he at once sinks in the water. Similarly, all these planets are floating in space, and this is due to the entrance of the supreme energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His energy is sustaining each planet, just like a handful of dust. If someone holds a handful of dust, there is no possibility of the dust falling. But if one throws it in the air, it will fall down. Similarly, these planets, which are floating in the air, are actually held in the fist of the universal form of Supreme Lord. By his strength and energy, all moving and non-moving things stay in their place. It is said in the Vedic hymns that because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sun is shining and the planets are steadily moving. Were it not for him, all the planets would scatter like dust in air and perish. Similarly, it is due to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the moon nourishes all vegetables. Due to the moon's influence, the vegetables become delicious. Without the moonshine, the vegetables can neither grow nor taste succulent. Human society is working, living comfortably, and enjoying food due to the supply from the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, mankind could not survive. The word Rasatmaka is very significant. Everything becomes palatable by the agency of Supreme Lord through the influence of the moon. Hare Krishna. Sumita Mataji.
Yes, Mataji. Text 14. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Dehamashritah Pranapana Samayukta Pachami Annam Chaturvidham. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, or outgoing and incoming, to digest the four kinds of foodstuff. Purport. According to Ayurvedic Shastra, we understand that there is a fire in the stomach which digests all food sent there. When the fire is not blazing, there is no hunger, and when the fire is in order, we become hungry. Sometimes, when the fire is not going nicely, treatment is required. In any case, this fire is representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedic mantras, Bruhat Aranyaka Upanishad 5.9.1 also confirm that the Supreme Lord or Brahman is situated in the form of fire within the stomach and is digesting all kinds of foodstuff. Ayam Agnir Vaishvanaro Yoyam Anta Purushe Yenadam Annam Pachate. Therefore, since he is helping the digestion of all kinds of foodstuff, the living entity is not independent in the eating process. Unless the Supreme Lord helps him in digesting, there is no possibility of eating. He thus produces and digests foodstuff, and by his grace, we are enjoying life. In the Vedanta Sutra 1.2.27, this is also confirmed. Shabdadibhyo Taha Pratisthanacha. The Lord is situated within sound and within the body, within the air, and even within the stomach as the digestive force. There are four kinds of foodstuff. Some are drunk, some are chewed, some are licked up, and some are sucked. And he is the digestive force for all of them. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Sandhya Mataji.
Hare
Please do
Krishna.
this one also, verse and then the translation.
Okay, Mataji. सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टो मत्ता स्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च वेदैश्च सर्वैरहम् एव वेद्यो वेदान्तकृद्वेदविद् एव चाहम्. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Purport. The Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. Thus, the Lord is not only all pervading, he is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. He is worshipable not only as an impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of Vedas as well. The Vedas give the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back to Godhead, back to home. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, and Krishna in his incarnation as Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. The commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of Vedanta Sutra. The Supreme Lord is so full that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, he is the supplier and digester of foodstuff, the witness of his activity, and the giver of knowledge in the form of the Vedas, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita. He is worshipable by the conditioned soul. Thus, God is all good, God is all merciful. Shall I read Mataji or Lavanya Mataji will conclude?
Yeah, Mataji. Lavanya Mataji, please go ahead.
Yeah, yes, Mataji. ఇక్కడ అంతఃప్రవిష్ట ఇదేనా మాతాజీ?
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah. అంతఃప్రవిష్ట శాస్త్ర జనానం. The living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended in his last life. So not only does the living entity enjoy or suffer in this world according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord, situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. If one is serious about understanding the Vedic knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because a living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. Vedic literature confirms this. Sau sarver veder giyati. All the Vedic literature beginning from the four Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and the Upanishads and Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, he is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us the right direction by which we can understand Krishna and the process of realizing him. The ultimate goal is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedanta Sutra 1.1.4 confirms this in the following verse. Tattu samanyayat. One can attain perfection in 3 stages. By understanding Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By performing the different process, one can approach him, and at the end, one can attain the supreme goal, who is no other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, the purpose of the Vedas, the understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined. Yeah, thank you, Mata.
Raju Prabhu.
Translation. There are 2 classes of being, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Purport. As already explained, the Lord is incarnation of Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra. Here the Lord is giving, in summary, the contents of Vedanta Sutra. He says that living entities who are innumerable can be divided into 2 classes, the fallible and infallible. The living entities are eternally separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When they are in contact with the material world, they are called Jiva Bhuta. And in the Sanskrit words are given Ksharaha Sarvani Bhutani. Sarvani means they are fallible. Those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are called infallible. Oneness doesn't mean that
they have no individuality, but that there is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the personality purpose of the creation. Of course, the spiritual world, there is no such things as creation. But since the Supreme Personality of Godhead has stated in the Vedanta Sutra, he is the source of all emanations, the that conception is explained. Hare Krishna.
Sapan Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna. According to the statement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, there are two classes of living entities. The Vedas give evidence of this, so there is no doubt about it. The living entities who are struggling in this world with the mind and five senses have their material bodies, which are changing. As long as a living entity is conditioned, his body changes due to contact with matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter, therefore there is no change. In material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, then dwindling and vanishing. These are changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age, there is no birth, there is no death. They all exist in oneness. Shara Sarvani Bhutani. Any living entity who has come in contact with matter, beginning from the first created being Brahma down to small ant, is changing its body. Therefore, they are fallible. In the spiritual world, however, they are always liberated in oneness. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for reading Prabhuji's and Mataji's. Sorry, I was multitasking. I had to cook also. So there is some gap.
No problem. Hare Krishna.
Okay, we'll start with Brahma Samhita, Mataji.
Yes.
So here we have ended with 16, and tomorrow we'll start with 17. Okay.
Yes.
Today you said 10 each చేయాలన్నారు కదా మీరు?
Yeah. అందరూ 10 వర్స్ లైన్ గా చేయమన్నారు ప్రాక్టీస్ లాగా.
Okay.
The last verse is remaining, Mataji. So once Prabhuji comes, he'll explain that verse. So meanwhile, we'll practice 10 verse. Yeah.
Okay, Mataji. Okay. Yeah, you can start, Mataji.
Yeah, మీరు స్టార్ట్ చేయండి మాతాజీ.
నేను దోశలు వేస్తున్నాను మాతాజీ. సో కొంచెం
మాతాజీ.
Yes, Mataji.
You can start, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
I'll do last. Yeah, yes.
The Brahma Samhita 5.1. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. The Brahma Samhita 5.29. Chintamani Prakara Sadma Sukalpa Vriksha.
మాతాజీ నెక్స్ట్ టైం అంటే చదివేటప్పుడు శ్లోకాస్ నెంబర్ చెప్పకుండా లైన్ గా చదువుకుంటూ వెళ్ళిపోండి 10 వరకు. ఓకే
ఓకే మాతాజీ.
సీక్వెన్స్ ఉంటుంది. యా.
ఓకే.
Now you are praying to Lord Govinda. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Mataji. Chintamani prakara sadma sukalpa vriksha laksha vriteshu surabhir abhipalayantam Lakshmi sahasra shata sambhrama sevyamanam Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Venum kvanantamaravindalayataksam Barhavatam samasitam budasundarangam Sandarpakotikamaniya vishesha shobham Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Alolatandrakalasadvanamalya vamshi Ratnagadam pranayakeni kalavilasam Shyamam tribhangalalitam niyataprapasam Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. अंगानि यस्य सकलेन्द्रियवृत्तिमन्ति पश्यन्ति पान्ति कलयन्ति चिरं जगन्ति आनन्दचिन्मय सदुज्ज्वल विग्रहस्य गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि अद्वैतमच्युतमनादिमनन्तरूपम् आद्यं पुराणपुरुषं नवयौवनं च वेदेषु दुर्लभमदुर्लभमात्मभक्तौ गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि पन्तास्तु कोटिशतवत्सरसम्प्रगम्यो वायोरथापि मनसो मुनिपुङ्गवानां यत्र पदसिन्य विचिन्त्य तत्त्वे गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि एकोऽप्यसौ रचयितुं जगदण्डकोटिं यशक्तिरस्ति जगदण्डचयाय दन्ता अण्डान्तरस्थपरमाणुचयान्तरस्थं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि
ఇంకా ఉన్నాయా మాతాజీ?
Yes, Mataji.
Up to 39.
Until 39?
29 to 39.
Okay, Mataji.
Actually, we need to take a printout, Mataji, so that we can read directly from the paper. Please, I request everyone to take a printout.
Or you can also open it on your respective.
Yes, Mataji, మన వేదాలు లింక్ ఉంది కదా, అది ఓపెన్ చేసుకుంటే అయిపోతుంది.
ఉంది కాబట్టి ఇది ఏంటంటే మనం ఇంట్లో ఊరికే చదువుకోవడానికి you can take a printout so that you can daily recite in front of the Lord. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Now you can read from Veda base or whatever you want. Mata is a little bit busy, so you can read from Veda base.
No, Mataji, I opened this one. 36 చదవాలి కదా ఇప్పుడు?
Yeah.
చేస్తున్నాను, కొంచెం లాగ్ ఉండొచ్చు.
స్క్రోల్ చేయడానికి కష్టం అవుతుంది మాతాజీ. ఇప్పుడు లైన్ గా చదవాలనుకోండి, లైన్ ఉంటే చదివేస్తాం అన్నట్టు అలా, అందుకే.
అవును, కరెక్టే అది. ఇప్పటికి అయితే నేను చేంజ్ చేస్తున్నాను, కొంచెం లాగ్ ఉండొచ్చు కానీ చేంజ్ చేస్తాను.
యా ఇట్స్ ఓకే. అంటే బిజీగా
ఎవరైనా సిస్టమ్ మీద ఉంటే నేను హోస్ట్ చేస్తాను. యూ కెన్ లైక్ అదర్వైజ్ ఐ కెన్ మేనేజ్.
You can all of you can open in the phone so that you can read.
రాజప్రభు మీరు ఉన్నారా?
సిస్టమ్ లో ఉన్నాను మాతాజీ. నా సిస్టమ్
హోస్ట్ చేయనా మిమ్మల్ని?
చేయండి మాతాజీ. కాకపోతే ఇది ఎక్కడ నుంచి మాతాజీ? వేద బేస్ నుంచి షేర్ చేయాలా?
మన వేద రీడింగ్ గ్రూప్ లో ఉంది, మళ్ళీ పంపిస్తాను. లేకపోతే నేను మేనేజ్ చేస్తానులేండి. జస్ట్ కొంచెం 1 సెకండ్ డిలే ఉంటుంది కానీ నేను చేస్తున్నా.
అవసరం లేదు మాతాజీ. యాక్చువల్ గా ఎవరిది వాళ్ళు ఓపెన్ చేసుకొని చదువుతారు మాతాజీ.
అది నేను అనేది, ఎవరిది వాళ్ళు ఓపెన్ చేసుకొని చదివేస్తే ఈజీగా అయిపోతుంది మాతాజీ.
ఈజీగా ఉంటుంది మాతాజీ.
ఓకే ప్రభుజీ. ఇప్పుడు ఎవరు సంయుక్త మాతాజీ ఇంకా కంటిన్యూ చేయాలి కదా?
యా 36 మాతాజీ. యా
యద్భావభావితదియో మనుజాస్తదైవ సంప్రాప్య రూపమహిమాసనయానభూషా సూక్తైర్యమేవ నిగమా ప్రతిథైస్తువంతి గోవిन्दమాదిపురుషం తమహం భజామి ఆనందచిన్మయ రస ప్రతిభావితాభి ताभिर्ययेव निजरूपतया कलाभि गोलोक एव निवसत्य अखिलात्मभूतो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि प्रेमाञ्जनच्चुरितभक्तिविलोचनेन सन्ता सदैव हृदयेषु विलोकयन्ति यं श्यामसुन्दरमचिन्त्य गुणास्वरूपं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि रामादिमूर्तिषु कलानियमेन तिष्ठन् नानावतारमकरोद्भुवनेषु किन्तु कृष्णा स्वयं समभवत् परमः पुमान्यो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि हरे कृष्ण. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Very nice.
ఇప్పుడు ఎవరు చేస్తారు?
సంయుక్త మాత, ఓకే. సంధ్య మాతాజీ
Hare Krishna Mataji.
చేస్తారా మాతాజీ?
I'll do Mataji.
మీ దగ్గర ఓపెన్ ఉంటే మీరు
మీరు ఓపెన్ చేసుకోండి.
Open చేసుకున్నాను Mataji.
అట్లా చూసుకుంటూ అక్కడే చదవండి.
మాతాజీ మీరు అవసరం లేదు ఇంకా చేంజ్ చేయకండి, అందరి దగ్గర ఉందనుకుంటాను.
You carry on,
పెడతాను
Mataji.
జస్ట్ ఇన్ కేస్ ఎవరి దగ్గరైనా. నాది అయిపోతుంది మాతాజీ,
No problem.
లాస్ట్ లో ఉన్నా.
Sri Brahma Samhita 5.1. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Sadma Shukalpa Vriksha Lakshavriteshu Surabhira Bipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasrashata Sambrama Sevyamanam Govindamapurusham tamaham bhajami Venum kanantamaravindalayataaksham Barhavatam samasitambudasundarangam Kandarpakotikamaniya vishesha shobham Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Alola-chandra-kalashatvanamalyavamshi Ratnagadam pranayakeli-kalavilasham Shamam tribhangalalitam niyataprakasham Govindamadipurusham tamaham bhajami Angani yasya sakalendriyavrittimanti Pashyanti panti kalayanti chiram jaganti Ananda chinmaya sadujjvala vigrahasya Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Advaitamachyutamanadimanantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayauvanam cha Vedeshu Durlabhamadurlabhamatma Bhaktau Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu koti satavatsara sampragamyo Vayorathapi manaso munipungavaanam Sopyasti yat prapadasimnya vichintya tattve Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Ekopyasau rachayutam jagadandakotim Yachaktirasti jagadandachaya danta Andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Yadbhava bhavitadiyo manujastataiva Sampraptya rupa mahima sanayana bhusha Suktairyameva nigama pratithaistuvanti Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Ananda chinmaya rasat pratibhavitabhis Thabir eva nijarupataya kalabhi Goloka eva nivasatya kilatma bhuto Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Premanjanachurita bhakti vilochanena Santas sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti Yam shama sundaramachintya gunaswarupam Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Ramadimurti sukala niyamena tishthan Nanavataramakarod bhuvaneshu kintu Krishna swayam samabhavat paramapumanyo Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Thank you, Mataji.
Excellent, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Raju Prabhuji, Sapan Kumar Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
I'll read next, Mataji.
ఓకే రాజు ప్రభుజీ.
మీరు చేయండి మాతాజీ, నేను కొంచెం
ఓకే ఓకే సపన్ కుమార్ ప్రభుజీ, you will read next.
Yeah, I'll read next.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do now. Sri Brahma Samhita, spoken by Lord Brahma to the Supreme Personality of Goddess Sri Govinda. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukalpa Vriksha Lakshavrutesu Surabhira Bipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Shata Samrama Sevyamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kvanantamaravinda Dalaya Taksham Barhavatam Samasitambuda Sundarangam Sandarbha Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandrakala Sattva Vamshi Ratnangadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shamam Tribangalalitam Niyata Prakasham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pashyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujjvala Vigrahasya Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitamachyutamanadi Mananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayavvanam Cha Vedeshu Durlabha Durlabhamatma Bhakto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Shatavassara Sampragamyo Vayoratapi Manaso Munipungavana Sopyasti Yatra Padasimni Vichinta Tattve Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopasyo Rachaitum Jagadanda Kotim Yashaktirasti Jagadanda Chayaya Danta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yadbhava Bhavita Diyo Manujastataiva Samprapya Rupa Mahimasanayana Bhusha Suktairyameva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabhi Tabiryaeva Nijarupataya Kalabi Golokayeva Nivasatya Kilatma Bhuto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadimurti Shukalani Yamena Tishta Nanavataram Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramappumanyo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Yes, Sapan Kumar Prabhuji. Raju Prabhuji.
ఫైల్ చూస్తున్నాను మాతాజీ, నేను చదువుతాను దీని తర్వాత.
Okay.
Prabhuji, మీకు ఫైల్ దొరకట్లేదంటే I can scroll it, Prabhuji. You can read it. హరే కృష్ణ.
అంటే మీరు లాగ్ అవుతుంది అన్నారు కదా, నాది ఉంది, నేను చూస్తున్నాను.
ఓకే. I can scroll now. I'm done with my work. If you want, you can start. రాజు ప్రభు, మీ వాయిస్ చాలా తక్కువ ఉంది. ఇప్పుడు వినబడుతోంది.
ఇప్పుడు వినిపిస్తుందా మాతాజీ?
మీ దగ్గర ఉందా ఫైల్ ఉందా?
Yes, Mataji.
ఓకే ప్రభుజీ, యూ కెన్ స్టార్ట్ ప్రభుజీ.
Sri Brahma Samhita. ईश्वरः परमा कृष्ण सच्चिदानंद विग्रह अनादिरादिर्गोविन्द सर्वकारण कारणम् चिन्तामणि प्रकर सद्मसुकल्प वृक्षा लक्षावृतेषु सुरभिरविपालयन्तम् लक्ष्मी सहस्र शतसम्भ्रम सेव्यमानम् गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि वेणुं त्वनन्तमरविन्ददलायताक्षम् बर्हावतं समसिताम्बुदसुन्दराङ्गम् कन्दर्पकोटिकमनीय विशेषशोभम् गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि आलोलचन्द्रकलसद्वसमान् सद्वनमाल्यवंशी रत्नांगतं प्रणयकेलिक कलाविलासं श्यामं त्रिभंगललितं नियतप्रकाशं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि अंगानि यस्य सकलेन्द्रियवृत्तिमन्ति पश्यन्ति पान्ति कलयन्ति चिरं जगन्ति आनंद चिन्मय सदुज्ज्वल विग्रहस्य गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि अद्वैतमच्युतमनादिमनन्तरूपम् आद्यं पुराणपुरुषं नवयौवनं च वेदेषु दुर्लभमात्मभक्तौ गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि पन्तास्तु कोटिशतवत्सर सम्प्रगम्यो वायोरतापि मनसो मुनिपुङ्गवानम् शोपस्ति यत्र पदसीम्य विचिन्त्य तत्त्वे गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि एकोऽप्यसौ रचयितं जगदण्डकोटिं यच्चक्तिरस्ति जगदण्डचयाय दन्ता यच्चक्तिरस्ति जगदण्डचयाय दन्ता अण्डान्तरस्थ परमाणुचयन्तरस्तम् गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि यद्भावभावि तदयो मनुजस्तदैव सम्प्राप्य रूपमहिमा सनयानभूषा सुक्तेर्वमेव निगम प्रतितैः सुवन्ति गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि आनन्द चिन्मय रसप्रतिभाविताभिः आनन्द चिन्मय रसप्रतिभाविताभिः ताभिर्य एव निजरूपतया कलाभिः गोलोक एव निवसत्य किलात्मभूतो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि प्रेमाञ्जनुचित भक्तिविलोचनेन सन्तः सदैव हृदयेषु विलोकयन्ति यं श्यामसुन्दरमचिन्त्य गुणस्वरूपं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि रामादिमूर्ति शुकला नियमेन तिष्ठन् नानावतारमकरोद्भुवनेषु किन्तु कृष्ण स्वयं समभवत् परमपुमान्यो कृष्ण स्वयं समभवत् परमपुमान्यो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि हरे कृष्ण माता
Hare Bol, Raju Prabhuji, you did it.
हरे कृष्ण
Yes, Tapan Prabhuji.
ईश्वरा परमा कृष्णा सच्चिदानंद विग्रह अनादिर्वादिर्गोविन्द सर्वकारण कारणम् चिन्तामणि प्रकर सद्म सुकल्प वृक्षा लक्षावृतेषु सुरभिरभिपालयन्तम् लक्ष्मी सहस्र शत संभ्रम सेव्यमानां गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि वेणुं त्वनन्तमरविन्ददलायताक्षम् बर्हावतंसं असितं बुधसुन्दराङ्गं कन्दर्पकोटिकमनीयविशेषशोभं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। आलोलचन्द्रकलसद्वनमाल्यवंशी रत्नाङ्गदं प्रणयकेलिकलाविलासं श्यामं त्रिभङ्गललितं नित्यप्रकाशं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। अङ्गानि यस्य सकलेन्द्रियवृत्तिमन्ति पश्यन्ति पान्ति कलयन्ति चिरं जगन्ति आनन्दचिन्मयसदुज्ज्वलविग्रहस्य गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। अद्वैतमच्युतमनादिमनन्तरूपम् आद्यं पुराणपुरुषं नवयौवनं च वेदेषु दुर्लभमदुर्लभम् आत्मभक्तौ गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। पन्तास्तु कोटिशतवत्सरसम्प्रगम्यो वायोरथापि मनसो मुनिपुङ्गवानां सोऽप्यस्ति यत्प्रपदसिम्न्यविचिन्त्य तत्त्वे गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। एकोऽप्यसौ रचितं जगदण्डकोटिं यच्चक्तिरस्ति जगदण्डछायदन्ता अण्डान्तरस्थपरमाणुचयन्त्र अस्तं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। यद्भावभावितधियो मनुजास्तथैव सम्प्राप्य रूपमहिमासनयानभूषा सुप्तैर्यमेव निगमप्रथितैस्तुवन्ति गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। आनन्दचिन्मयरसा प्रतिभाविताभिस्ताभिर्य एव निजरूपतया कलाभिः गोलोक एव निवासत्यखिलात्मभूतो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। प्रेमाञ्जनच्चुरितभक्तिविलोचनेन सन्तः सदैव हृदयेषु विलोकयन्ति यं श्यामसुन्दरमचिन्त्य गुणस्वरूपं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। रामादिमूर्तिषु कलानियमेन तिष्ठान् नानावतारमकरोद्भुवनेषु किन्तु कृष्ण स्वयं सम्भवत् परमपुमान्यो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि।
Hari Bol Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. Very well recited.
అకించన్ ప్రభు చేస్తారా? హరే కృష్ణ. మాతాజీ నేను స్టార్ట్ చేస్తాను.
Yes, ma.
శ్రీ బ్రహ్మ సంహిత 5.1
తర్వాత చేస్తాం. సారీ, it took time to unmute actually.
Yeah, no problem. If you want, you can start, Prabhuji.
Yeah, I'll try, Mataji. Let me try. 1 second. I'm pulling up that PDF.
I'm changing. You can see the screen and you can do it. No problem.
Change చేయగలుగుతారా మీరు?
Actually,
this breakup is good. Mine, I pulled the same PDF, but okay. Yeah, I'll try, Mataji. Please forgive me.
Come on.
Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Sadma Kalpa Vriksha Laksha Vriteshu Surabhi Abhipalayantam Lakshmi Sarasra Sata Sambra Sevayamanyam Govindamadipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Venum, yeah. Oh. Venum Kwanantamarvinda Dalayaktaksham Barahavatamsam Asitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarbakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindamadipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Aloka Chandra Lasadavanamalia Labamshi रत्नागदं प्रणयकेलिकलाविलासं श्यामं त्रिभङ्गललितं निर्यतप्रकाशं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। अङ्गानि यस्य सकलेन्द्रियवृत्तिमन्ति पश्यन्ति पान्ति कलयन्ति चिरं जगन्ति आनन्दचिन्मय सद उज्ज्वलविग्रहस्य गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। अद्वैतमच्युतमनादिमनन्तरूपम् आद्यं पुराणपुरुषं नवयौवनं च वेदेषु दुर्लभमत्मभक्तौ गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। पन्तस्तु कोटिशतवस्तर सम्प्रगम्यो वायुरतोऽपि मनसो मुनिपुङ्गवानां सोऽपि अस्ति यत प्रपदसिम्नि अचिविचिन्तयन्ते गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। एकोऽपि असौ रचयितं जगदण्डकोटिं यच्च sorry माता यशक्तिरस्ति जगदण्डचयादन्ता अन्धान्तरस्ततः परमाणु चयान्तरस्थं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। यद्भावभवितो मनुजस्तथैव सम्प्राप्तरूपमहिमा सनयानभूषा शुक्तिर्यम् एव निगम तथैतस्तुवन्ति गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। आनन्दचिन्मय रसप्रतिभाविताभिस्ताभिर्य एव निज रूपतया कलाभिः गोलोक एव निवसति अखिलात्मभूतो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। प्रेमाञ्जचरितभक्तिविलोचनेन सन्ता सदैव हृदयेषु विलोकयन्ति यं श्यामसुन्दरमचिन्तं गुणस्वरूपं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। रामादिमूर्तेषु कलानियमेन स्थितान् नानावतारमकरोद भुवनेषु किन्तु कृष्णस्वयं समभवत् परं कुर्मां यो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि।
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
40 is there, no Mataji?
No, Prabhuji. Today we are doing 29 to 39.
29, 39. Sorry Mataji, there were so many mistakes.
No, Prabhuji. Why you are saying sorry? It is Krishna is Bhavagrahi Janardana, and he'll see your effort. You are taking out time and trying to do this itself is great.
Yes,
Thank you,
Yes,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji. Yes.
Thank you. Shri Brahma Samhita 5.1. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chintamani Prakarasatma Sukalpa Vriksha Lakshavriteshu Surabhirabhipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि वेणुं क्वनन्तमरविन्ददलायताक्षं बरहावतं समसिताम्बुदसुन्दराङ्गं कन्दर्पकोटिकमनीयविशेषशोभं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि आलोलचन्द्रकलसद्वनमाल्यवंशी रत्नागदं प्रणयकेलिकलाविलासम् श्यामं त्रिभङ्गललितं नियतप्रकाशं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि अङ्गानि यस्य सकलेन्द्रियवृत्तिमन्ति पश्यन्ति पान्ति कलयन्ति चिरं जगन्ति आनन्दचिन्मयसदुज्ज्वलविग्रहस्य गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि अद्वैतमच्युतमनादिमनन्तरूपम् आद्यं पुराणपुरुषं नवयौवनं च वेदेषु दुर्लभमदुर्लभमात्मभक्तौ गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि पन्थास्तु कोटिशतवत्सरसम्प्रगम्यो वायोरथापि मनसो मुनिपुङ्गवानां सोऽप्यस्ति यत्प्रपदसिम्य विचिन्त्य तत्त्वे गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि एकोऽप्यसौ रचयितुं जगदण्डकोटिं यच्छक्तिरस्ति जगदण्डचयाय अण्डान्तरस्थपरमाणुचयान्तरस्थं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि यद्भावभावितधियो मनुजास्तथैव सम्प्राप्य रूपमहिमासनयानभूषा सूक्तैर्यमेव निगमप्रथितैस्तुवन्ति गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि आनन्दचिन्मयरसप्रतिभाविताभिस्ताभिर्य एव निजरूपतया कलाभिः गोलोक एव निवसत्यखिलात्मभूतो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि प्रेमाञ्जनच्छुरितभक्तिविलोचनेन सन्तः सदैव हृदयेषु विलोकयन्ति यं श्यामसुन्दरमचिन्त्य गुणस्वरूपं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि रामादिमूर्तिषु कलानियमेन तिष्ठन् नानावतारमकरोत् भुवनेषु किन्तु कृष्णः स्वयं समभवत् परमः पुमान्यो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि. We are all done. Thank you so much for
Yes, ma'am.
staying longer. Sorry that it took longer than every day.
No, it's
So
okay,
tomorrow
ma'am. We are doing 10-10, right? So it's easy
Yeah.
for us. Yes.
So రేపు నెక్స్ట్ 10 చేద్దామా మాతాజీ ఇవే 10 కంటిన్యూ
మాతాజీ దీపా మాతాజీ ఆర్ లవణ్య మాతాజీ వన్ ఆఫ్ యూ కెన్ ఒకసారి చేసి రికార్డింగ్ పెట్టారా మాతాజీ మీది వన్ ఆఫ్ యూ
Yes, Prabhuji.
దిస్
Sure,
10
Prabhuji.
And
Sure.
Prabhuji వస్తారన్నారు ప్రభుజీ రేపు. సో రేపు లాస్ట్
నేను పర్సనల్ గా వింటాను మాతాజీ అట్లా
ఓకే
ప్రాక్టీస్ కి మరి రేపు వస్తారో అది చేద్దాము ఇది ఒకసారి అయితే వీలైతే పెట్టండి మాతాజీ
పెడతాను. యాక్చువల్ గా దీపమాతాజీ ప్రభుజీ ఏమన్నారంటే నేను వచ్చాక లాస్ట్ కంప్లీట్ చేద్దాము అని అన్నారు. సో బహుశా రేపు లాస్ట్ చెప్పొచ్చు.
రేపు లాస్ట్ చెప్తాం. ఓకే.
కాకపోతే ఇట్స్ ఓకే మాతాజీ, వి విల్ రీడ్ ద నెక్స్ట్ 10 సో దట్ వి కెన్ హ్యావ్ ప్రాక్టీస్, రైట్?
ఓకే మాతాజీ.
యా. ఒకటే
I'll also record the first 10 and I'll keep in 10 slots so that the practice can be done.
Yes Mataji.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta koti vaishnav vrind ki jai. Srila Prabhupada book reading ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yeah, it's better to keep 10-10. Everyone, you can keep 10-10. So today we did 10, right? So you can keep 10 at a time.
Yes, Mataji.
So it will be like practice. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Yes.